Alrighty. Well, good evening, everyone. I think we're going to get started in just a minute. I know some other people might be trickling in, but I want to make sure we get through a lot of information and that you all feel like you have time to ask questions. So my name is Carrie Morgan, and I'm the gallery director here at MCAD, and I also have the honor of being the program administrator for the McKnight Visual Artist Fellowships. And this is an information session to help kind of clarify or give you some background about what the fellowship's about and some strategies that might help you apply for it. I do want this to be as useful to you as possible, so if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand. And because we are this evening videotaping this session, I will restate your questions so that anybody who decides to review this video at their leisure will know what questions were being asked. And also tonight, I've invited Tia Simone Gardner, who's one of our 2016 McKnight Fellows, to talk about the way she approached applying for the fellowship. And so that'll happen in about 20 minutes into the presentation, and you're welcome to ask Tia questions as well. And finally, I'll mention that the second part of this presentation is more about the formal ways about applying online. So if you are very adept at navigating an online application system or have applied for this particular fellowship before, you may not need that part of tonight's information session, so feel free to leave whenever you want. I'm not going to be offended. It's just in your best interest that you know that you don't have to stay for things that perhaps you already know well. So. Anyways, again, thanks for coming, and I hope that at the end of the evening, if you haven't already signed your name, I'm trying to collect names and emails so we know whether or not you are on our mailing list. And again, appreciate you coming. So tonight we're here talking about the McKnight information sessions for the visual arts. And first I'm going to give a brief overview about what the McKnight Foundation does as far as funding these particular programs. We're very lucky. Since 1981, the McKnight Foundation has been funding mid-career artists, and they allow for different arts organizations to oversee the program. And MCAD was lucky to be a part of that initial group. In 1981, there were 6 different fellowships that were offered in different disciplines, and now it's grown to 10. But what it is time. It's money, and it's intended to be time to help artists study, reflect, experiment, and explore. They want to encourage artists in the state of Minnesota to take advantage of opportunities and work on new projects. And as of just a couple years ago, they contribute nearly $1 million per year for these individual artist grants, which is a lot of money. The McKnight Foundation funds in a lot of different areas globally in terms of the environment and children's reading and neuroscience, but the arts is one area that they focus on just for Minnesota artists. And this particular fellowship is designed for mid-career artists, and we'll talk a little bit about what defines a mid-career artist later on in the presentation. As I said, what the foundation does is, as an organization, I have to apply to the McKnight Foundation every 3 years to continue overseeing this program. So it's upon the backs of the organizations to go out and make sure that we're providing opportunities that are useful for our artists. And the different areas, other disciplines, in case you hear about them, like, for example, we have McKnight Fellows, playwrights, we have musicians, we have dancers and choreographers, we have ceramic artists, we have media artists. And so there's a lot of different genres of artists that are being supported by these mid-career fellowship grants. So for us, for the visual artists, this is a program that we award to 8 outstanding Minnesota visual artists, and they need to have had an established record of artistic success. And this program supports mid-career artists by providing financial assistance, professional criticism from visiting critics, and the opportunity for other professional development. Specifically, you receive, if you are awarded one of the 8 fellowships, a $25,000 cash award that can be used however you so choose. You also receive studio visits from 6 visiting critics, and these visiting critics might be curators or artists or other types of arts professionals. And the 8 fellows who are awarded this fellowship get to choose those 6 visiting critics. Then you have the opportunity to invite 4 of those visiting critics back to participate in a McKnight discussion series where 2 fellows work with a selected critic to develop a discussion on the topic of their choice. You also have the opportunity to use additional funding towards individually focused professional development, such as travel, exhibition expenses, website creation, or however else you wish. So at this point, the additional funding is a $3,000 cash award. All you have to do is kind of describe how you would use that money and report back to me about it. To give you a highlight, just to give you a plug for something upcoming, the McKnight Visual Artist discussion series, we are hosting this coming April, and what this will be doing is pairing 2 of our 2015 fellows with 1 critic. So for example, on April 4th, we have Cesar Garcia, who's the founder and director and curator of the Mistake Room in Los Angeles, and he's going to be in conversation with Christina Estelle and Selma Fernandez-Richter. On April 11th, Claire Gilman, who's the curator at the Drawing Center in New York, will be in conversation with Scott Nedrolo and Kelly O'Brien. On April 18th, Michael Rooks, who is curator at the High Museum in Atlanta, will be in conversation with Tracy Crum and Alexandros Lindsay. And on April 24th, Michael Ned Holte, who is an independent curator and writer and co-director of a program in art at the California Institute of the Arts, will be in conversation with Gregory Euclid and Louise Fitch. And so I hope you'll be able to come. Those discussion series will be here in Auditorium 150, and they will start at 6:30 on each of those evenings. Now to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements for our mid-career fellowships. First of all, you need to be a visual artist, which means your primary means of expression cannot be solely video, film, or theater-based performance, because there are other McKnight Artist Fellowships in those areas. You need to be a resident of Minnesota, and you need to have lived in the state at least a year before applying for this fellowship. It is fine for you to reside outside of the Twin Cities. For example, Christina Estelle and David Bowen, who were my 2014 and 2015 fellows, they're both from Duluth. I've also had fellows, Gregory Euclid's from LeSueur, Aaron Spengler's been from, a previous fellow was from Park Rapids. So there's nothing that keeps out-state artists from winning these fellowships. And this is a statewide fellowship, and we love having a variety of people, of course, win these fellowships. You do, however, when you're an out-state artist, you often do have to come to the Twin Cities, because that's, for time's sake, that's often where these studio visits and a lot of the activities have to happen. But we do compensate any out-state artists in terms of mileage, and if you need to spend the night and get a hotel room, we arrange for that as a fellow, so it's not an increased financial burden for you. Also, I'll mention, if you are a finalist for the McKnight, a finalist means that you come and do studio visits with our jurors. You're also, we compensate you for any costs involved in bringing your artwork to the Twin Cities. If we can't come to you, we can't move out outside of a 1-hour radius. It's hard to do as a part of our jurying process, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. But as I say, we don't want this to be a financial liability for anybody, so if there are any questions, you're welcome to ask me about that. Finally, to be a mid-career artist, the definition is in that you need to be beyond emerging. And what does that mean? This year, we're implementing a minimum of 8 years of professional exhibition experience, such as inclusion in regional or national gallery and museum exhibitions, and some evidence of having received other awards, grants, and fellowships. And there might be other ways that you have professional experience. And so if you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask me about it. Because maybe not everybody does gallery-type exhibitions. You might have an artistic practice that does other things and activates other areas and might be more collaborative. So you're welcome to ask if you think you have the minimum 8 years of requirement. We ask that you not be a student enrolled in a degree-seeking program and currently taking classes, because the goal of this is to provide you with time and money and space. And very often, if you're taking classes, it means you actually you might be mentored by somebody else, and you might have a lot of other deadlines. And so we want this to be a time that if you receive the fellowship, you can utilize it to the greatest potential. It is fine if you apply as a collaborative. So if you work with another person or two other people, you're welcome to apply as a collaborative. And again, if you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask me if it seems a little complicated. If you are collaborative, you each don't get $25,000, I must say. You have to split that $25,000. So, as far as the application process goes, this is a completely online application, and our deadline is going to be on Friday, March 24th at noon. So that's 12 p.m. noon. So please start your application many days in advance, because it's very hard to start it that morning and expect to finish, because very often you're going to run into problems that you don't anticipate. Even if you look at it and think, oh, I got this, it doesn't mean you got it. You really do need to start at least a week in advance, I would suggest. And then that gives, if you run into problems, if you have problems formatting your images, if you have questions about your resume or your artist statement, that gives you time to call us and talk to us about it. Because that morning that it's due, we get a lot of phone calls and we are not able to help people the way we wish we could. It's just too late. So I just want to press upon you to please start early. And those who finish early, because already we've had people click the submit button, and there's a benefit to hitting the submit button early, because we start reviewing these applications that are submitted right now. And we review them to make sure that you don't have your name and your address and your phone number and your website on your resume or your artist statement. And we also want to make sure that you've uploaded 10 images and you didn't accidentally upload one image twice. And so we kind of review things. And if there's a mistake, if you do it early, we can let you know about it and you have plenty of time to fix it. Even in the past, we've let people know if some of their images look blurry and they may not be the best images possible. And again, you won't have that benefit if you hit submit close to the deadline. So I would encourage you to start now and submit early if possible. So what do you have to do to apply? Well, it's all online, and you have to go to www.mcad.edu/McKnight. And what you have to be able to upload to our online submission site are 10 images, and they do need to be at least 1920 in the largest dimension. So that means 1920. If you have a horizontal image, it'll be the width. And if you have a vertical image you're submitting, it'll be the height. It doesn't matter, that other dimension doesn't matter. It just has to be 1920 in the longest dimension. And it needs to be smaller than 1.8 megabytes and preferably 72 ppi. Since these images are going to be viewed on screen by our jurors, that's why these don't need to be print quality images. They're just looking at them on their computer screens. You also, if you are a video artist or somebody who uses sound or does some other kind of time-based media as a part of your practice, you are allowed to upload a video, 2 videos that is, up to 3 minutes each to YouTube. You do, however, have to reference any video in one of those 10 images. So you have to take a still image from that video, or if it's an installation that has multi-components, but it's one piece, you give it one title or conceive of it as one piece. It just needs to be referenced. We don't want to make it so that if you happen to be a multimedia artist who does things in different media, that you are able to have 11 or 12 kind of images rather than just the 10 that other artists might be limited to. You also need to upload a resume, and your resume can be as long as you want it to be. It should outline, again, your education or your professional achievements. It might mention if you've received a Minnesota State Arts Board grant or if you have publications. It's really, and if you want an example of that, there's a really good one on the College Art Association website. You just Google College Art Association and resume, and it'll take you right to this page that gives you a very good example of what you could include in your professional resume. We also need an artist statement, and it should be no more than 1 page. If it's more than 1 page, it's not as if our system doesn't know what 1 page looks like versus 2 pages. So if it goes a little over, that's fine. But we're asking for 1 page because of brevity. I mean, it's better to be concise and precise when you're talking about who you are, what you do, and why you do it. A juror, if you make it to the second round of juring, that's when our jurors review artist statements and resumes, and long ones are not necessarily better ones. So that in terms of artist statements. And finally, one thing that I must say that we've asked for recently was a brief description of what you hope to accomplish during the fellowship. And it doesn't need to be long, it could just be a sentence or two, but it might just speak to the fact of, in the upcoming year, this is what I'd be working on. And this is helpful for the juring process because these jurors take their job very seriously. And they know that you will have the opportunity, if you're selected, to be inviting in critics, arts writers, curators to do studio visits with you. They're usually 1.5 to 2 hours in length. And the jurors want to make sure they have a sense about what is it you're going to be talking about during this period of time. And if they kind of have a sense that you're kind of floundering and don't know what you're up to, they may be a little bit less inclined to give you the fellowship. So it does. And I'm not going to care if that is really what you do during your fellowship year. You just have to convince those jurors that you know what you're doing at this moment in time, if that makes sense. I mean, so again, I'm not going to come back to you and say, you know what, you said in your artist statement that you're going to do these things, and I'm not seeing you do that. That's not the way it works. But it really is about how you kind of come off as kind of knowing what it is you want and would be open to having dialogues with these interesting people. So. And finally, the other thing we've added this year is an additional PDF. So if you are an artist who works with text a lot, or if you have a book artist where we don't allow for video showing you flipping pages of a book, but maybe you want to show multiple images of a book that you can't put in your 10 images. Again, this additional PDF needs to be referenced in the 10 images that you do upload, but it allows you to give a little bit more textual background about maybe what it is that you're doing. And again, you don't have to do this. This is just, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, and we've had a number of artists who do writing in addition to doing their visual art, or works with it, and I can't upload a text and the jurors can't read it. That's the problem. So again, it has to be referenced in those 10 images, but you can say, see additional PDF. And I can explain what that might look like a little bit later. Are there any questions about the application process? I feel like this is a thing that might confuse people the most.
So does the PDF file, like if you have a didactic that you're explaining something further that's educational or academic, does that have to be a PDF file or can it be a Word file?
I think we're asking for it to be a PDF file.
Okay.
So the question was, if you have extra didactics, hopefully you don't need, and this is the idea, this is going to supplement what you're able to put on your 10 images. And I'll show you later on that there is a place when you're uploading your images where you put your name, not your name, you put your title, the date, the media, and there's actually a place where you can add like a didactic about.
And it'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Turn it into a PDF file.
No, it doesn't turn it into a PDF file. I'll get to that in a minute. I'll show you what that looks like. There's a comment area where you can add your comments to the images that you're uploading. Okay, I'll explain this in a minute, because most people I don't think are going to need to upload an additional PDF. It's really for people who have more, a lot of text that they would have to. It's not to just embellish what it is your images are about. It's that your actual practice involves something that you can't fully explain what it is you're doing in those 10 images in your artist statement, in a resume, or in a video. So this is a supplement. And if you have questions, and we'll be monitoring this because this is the first time we've actually offered this, and if it feels like this isn't what it's meant to be for, I'll call you and talk to you. This is one of the reasons why I say that, it's better that if you have questions, contact us early, or if you hit the submit button early, I can go back in and talk to you about if I have questions or concerns. But let me get to that point about that idea that maybe you want to say something about the image that you've uploaded, because there is a place in our application that it's a seamless additional information you can add, but I'll get to that in a minute, okay? So selection criteria. This is the information that we put both in our application requirements for you as an applicant, and this is also information we give to our 3 jurors. And so this is the very broad description of who is being selected for this fellowship. First of all, you need to be an applicant who is giving us evidence of high quality work, as evidenced in the submitted materials, and most importantly, work samples. And the reason why we say most importantly work samples is because in the first round of jurying, that's when we have, the last couple years, we've had around 260 applicants. Those images are what the jurors are going to look at and assign you a number. They're going to assign you a number between 1 and 5, 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And in this first round of jurying, these jurors have access to your artist statement. They have access to your resume, and they'll have access to your PDF. But in the first round of jurying, they're not required to look at your artist statement or required to look at your resume. We are going to ask that they look at the PDF. It's only in the second round of jurying that we require our jurors to look at your artist statement and look at your resume. And the reason for that is because of sheer numbers, because right now we give them 2 weeks to go through the 260 applicants. And if we ask them to read your artist statement and look over your resume, it would take at least 3 times that long. So you need to have all that there, because if they're interested, they may click on your resume, they might ask a question about, watch, I really want to know more now. So this information's all there. But the reason why I'm saying that most important is your work samples is those are the images that they are going to immediately react to. They're looking at the visual material that you're providing them in those 10 images and in your video samples if you use video or sound or whatever those supplementary files are. The second selection criteria is evidence of serious commitment to artistic practice, such as accomplishments to date, as well as promise for continued development. And again, that evidence of serious commitment to artistic practice is really something they're going to learn and glean from your resume. So again, this is the overarching for all 3 parts of the jurying process. The first one, there's 3 rounds of jurying that take place. This third is the impact the fellowship will have on the artist. And again, they might look at your images and guess, but if they read your artist statement where you've explicitly and very clearly and articulated very well, like what you hope to accomplish during the fellowship period, that's how they would ascertain more the impact that the fellowship would have on the artist, or they'd get that from doing a studio visit if you make it to the 3rd round of jurying. And finally, the panel will be asked to consider a breadth of artistic practice among Minnesota artists, which include a wide range of media, aesthetics, and traditions that might be influenced by ethnicity, gender, and geography. And this they know going in when they're looking at the 260, that this is, the McKnight Foundation wants to make sure that diversity in lots of different ways is represented in who the final fellows are. And not one individual juror is going to control that. I mean, this is why we have 3 different jurors and we have a 3-tiered jurying process. But do know that we're very explicit about this, that we don't want 5 painters or 8 painters or 8 photographers. I mean, they really are supposed to be looking at a wide range of media, and they're supposed to be looking in terms of content, in terms of ideas, in terms of, however they're kind of judging the work, to be as diverse as possible. And that's going to vary tremendously. So we can talk a little bit more about that if you have some questions. So these are very broad ideas. And these are criteria that the McKnight Foundation has encouraged us to have, too. This is something that if you are a choreographer, if you're applying for the choreography or the Playwright Center or through the dancers or through IFP, these are going to be very similar selection criteria that the McKnight Foundation wants us to be asking you for.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About the artist statement. Do I do it later?
You can ask me about the artist statement now.
So is the artist statement about the current work we're going to send in that's done, or the work that we are looking to do?
Yeah. That's a good question. So the question is, should the artist statement be about the work that you've uploaded to your application site, or should it be more geared towards the work that you're going to do maybe in the future? And I think most of your artist statement should talk about the work that they're looking at, those 10 images. But you could, I have one of our fellows, Eric Benson, who spoke to applicants at Springboard for the Arts last week. One of his 10 images was a work in progress. So, I mean, it's fine if you choose to do something like that. But generally, you want your artist statement to reinforce the images that you're looking at. So if you wrote an entire artist statement about something that you haven't even done, they might be really confused. So you should pay attention to that. And that's something I would encourage everyone to do, is that once...
It's been started. So if it's been started and your threads are there.
If your artwork's been started.
Like if you've started a new series and your themes and threads of that new series is there, like in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the individual questions that it's hard to answer authoritatively because everyone's artist statement and everyone's practice is going to be a little different. I mean, generally we're asking that your artist statement refer to and inform the 10 images and maybe the videos or maybe the PDF or anything supplementary that you're providing us with. So it should inform what they're seeing. But as I said in the artist statement, we're asking you to at least address what is it that you're going to be working on in the upcoming year. So in addition to the selection criteria that I just outlined, what we do as part of the jurying process is in the second round of jurying, which I'll describe in a minute, the jurors actually share with one another what they were looking for when they were going through the applications. And this is just a sampling of some of the things that over the last couple years the jurors have said. Every set of jurors changes every year, and so that's always an opportunity. You know, the slate is always wiped clean. And so that's why you should be applying for this fellowship every year because your odds are just as good every year that you apply. This criteria, again, these are just with the individual artists. We ask them to share with one another because they do this over the phone. We're having a conference call. It takes about 2 hours when we go through all of the semifinalists. And in order to kind of get a sense of kind of the biases of our jurors, we asked them to share with one another what were they looking for when they were going through the applications. And these are just a sampling of what they might say. Like one of the jurors said that he or she was looking for aesthetic and conceptual depth and substance. They were responding against formula. They were looking for something that didn't seem like 10 different examples of the same theme. They were looking for artists working with materials in an interesting way while maintaining consistency. Another juror said out loud, well, I'm looking for work that was innovative and pushed boundaries. I'm particularly conscious about making sure the artwork presented was recent, that the artist had an active practice, not just showing older work, and that the artist seemed to be at a mid-career level. Another juror would say, I'm looking for work that reads as contemporary. I'm looking for a surprise or something unexpected. Another juror said, I'm looking for robustness in the practice, a liveliness, variations of work samples, yet a cohesiveness. It needed to be immediately struck by the work visually. And the diversity of practices and background was important. So again, this is after the second round of jurying, which is when they would have looked at the images a second time and then gone back and read an artist statement, looked over your resume, and they would have looked at any other supplementary videos, or in this case, it'll be a PDF. And again, what this means, I have no idea. I mean, we'll be honest, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to be visually compelling to somebody. We don't really know what's going to be innovative to one person or feel like you're pushing the boundaries. So in a way, you know, this is very idiosyncratic. It's very subjective. As I say, that the individuals speaking have a sense of what this might mean, but it's not like there's some formula out there that really I can say this is what your work ought to look like, because it really varies from year to year. But what you do hear is this idea that the images often have to be compelling, and that's why it's important to have high quality images. It's important. If you don't know how to use a camera really well, you know, you pay a professional to do it, or you barter with somebody and say, I really need these to look good, because it does make a difference. You really need to be able to show your work in the best light possible. You know, this idea of like looking for a surprise or something unexpected, again, that's something, if you're looking at 260 applicants and they have 10 images each, that's 2,600 images. And that's where when you're selecting, you know, the 10 images that you're going to upload, you know, you think about the work that's going to stand out, that's really going to make them look twice. And we'll talk about this, and Tia's going to elaborate on that too, kind of thinking about like what do you upload? Do you do details of something? Do you show an installation shot of something? Because all those choices actually do matter. And it's not that there's something right or wrong about, you know, there's no formula. But as I say, I think that what I encourage artists to do too is like when you're doing this application, you come with maybe a couple iterations of 10 images and you share it with somebody. Like somebody you know, maybe somebody you don't know well, and say, please look over my 10 images and then read my artist statement. Do they seem like they're working together? Does this artist statement support what it is you're looking in my images? Do these images, are they clear? Can you tell what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, I'll show you where the comment area is for you to upload your own comments about the images. So these are all things to kind of take into consideration. real quick, I'm going to go over the review process, and here I can talk a little bit more about these tiers of jurying. So, once you submit your application, our office reviews every single application. We spend 4 days after the application deadline before we turn over the database with these applications to our jurors. In the first round of jurying, these arts professionals, they review all the submissions in the form of digital images. They look at them on their own computer monitors, and they score you between 1 and 5. And I mentioned 1 is the lowest and 5 is the highest. And the decisions are tabulated. So this is our webmaster here at MCAD just makes a spreadsheet and adds them up, so it's the cumulative score. And the top 30 to 40, number-wise, move up into the second round. And so just to give you a sense, like the highest score you could possibly get is a 15. You could have gotten a 5 from 3 jurors. I've had the joy of administering this program for 7.5 years. I have had one artist in 7.5 years get 15. It doesn't happen very often. 14 is very rare. 13 is very rare. I mean, most common when we're looking for a break of the top 30 to 40, it's coming at the number 10. And you can get a number 10 by getting a 4 from somebody, a 4 from somebody, and a 2 from somebody. Just to give you a sense that, again, it's very subjective, and these numbers actually, in the big scheme of the world, that's why I don't tell anybody what their cumulative scores are, because they really mean nothing. I hate to say this. But, I mean, really, each individual juror, the difference between getting in the second round and not is one number. Like if you get a 9, you probably won't get in. If you get a 10, you probably will. And anyone who gets a 5 automatically gets to the final round, which again happens all the time. A lot of the fellows will get a 5 from someone, which is the highest score, and they'll get a 1 from somebody, which is the lowest score. And they end up getting a fellowship. I mean, again, I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible to just explain that this is not a perfect system. Like in a perfect system, maybe you all would get 30-minute studio visits and it would take a year and a half. But the idea is what happens is that in our second tier of jurying, as I mentioned, that what happens is the top 30 to 40 move on to a second round. And in this round, they are given 5 days, the jurors are, to review your images, to review your artist statement and your resume. And then we have a 2-hour conference call where we're all kind of hooked up and they're all looking at their screens, and we go through each of these maybe 40 semifinalists. And that's just an opportunity for the person who gave you a 5 to argue why they think your work is like amazing, why they loved your artist statement, where they see the strength of your work. And they convince the person who gave you a 1 that you should move forward and get a studio visit. As I say, getting 555 rarely happens. Somebody getting a 5 and a 1 happens every year. So that's why, again, you should apply every year, because you never know if the stars are aligned, if somebody's going to go to bat for you and root for you. So you just never know. So, I mean, there's a lot of artists here who are all deserving of these fellowships, and that's the other thing, that there's a wide range of what our jurors think is good work. And so I'm thankful that we have the 8 fellowships we do give out every year, and that the McKnight Foundation believes in supporting artists as much as they do. So, okay, so I digress. But anyways, I just want to let you know that this is not a perfect system, and that this number thing is really, it's just a numbers game to some degree. So, so what happens during the second round of jurying, as I mentioned, we go through all of these applications, the 30 to 40, and those numbers vary. One year there was only 29, another year there was like 44, but optimum is between 30 and 40. And out of that, we ask the jurors either, yes, do you want to do a studio visit? No, do you not want to do a studio visit? Are you a maybe? And what happens is at the end of this 2 hours, we see how many yeses there are, how many nos there are, and how many maybes there are. And it's a back and forth, it's a consensus building kind of exercise. But we will end up having 16 people move forward to get studio visits. So what happens is that all of that, the first and second rounds will be done no later than Friday, May 5th, and we will send out emails to people. And if you'll get one email, if you don't make it to the to the semifinal round, you'll get one email. If you make it to the semifinal round but are not selected to move forward with the finalist studio visit, you'll get a second email, a different email. And that email will say that I'm sorry that you didn't make it to the final round, but you did make it to the semifinal round. And one of the perks about making it to the semifinal round is that you can call and ask for feedback. Because the fellowship coordinator, Melanie, and I actually take notes during this 2-hour conference call, because they're trying to make decisions, these jurors are, and some of them are going to bat for you and saying, I really like image number 10, or another one saying, well, I really felt like number 2 was kind of a weaker image, or they'll say, I really didn't like the artist statement, and another person will say, well, I really did. So what you hear is the idiosyncrasies of a conversation, and it varies from artist to artist necessarily how useful the feedback is, but the thing is I can record it and I can provide it to you. You call me or you can come into my office and we do it face to face. I don't send you an email with all of those comments because I want these jurors to be as honest as possible, and we're not taking great notes. I mean, we're taking notes, but we're not doing it verbatim necessarily. They're, half sentences and anyways, but that's, I think, a perk because it can also tell you what things maybe you should, or what these 3 people, again, it's just 3 people, but think that maybe they really liked one thing about your application and were less impressed with another. Or you might have a split and you just realize that somebody likes something and somebody likes another and it's not really totally useful. But this is the least we can do to kind of give you some feedback. And then what happens if you are one of the lucky 16, you get a phone call. I will call you and say, you get to jump up in the air a little bit and then get really stressed because you have 2 weeks then to prepare for a studio visit. And if you're an outstate artist, you're welcome to come to the Twin Cities and we will find you a place at MCAD to put up your work. And I provide assistance, people who can help you install your work. Or we can come to your studio visit, or your studio, or maybe your home, or maybe you want to borrow a friend's space. But we find a time that works for you. And these studio visits are short. They're only 20 minutes, and so they're very intense. And if you are selected to be a finalist, then there's more information that I distribute to all the finalists so they have a sense about what to expect. There's a 2-page best practices sheet that I provide. So if people have questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's kind of something that also maybe Tia can speak to from her experience. And finally, then what happens is after those 20-minute visits over a 2-day period, the jurors decide which 8 to give the fellowships to. And again, then I call the people who are the winners and I email the people who are not. And again, the people who make it to the finalist round but end up not being fellows, they also get feedback. They'll get feedback about how their studio visit went, because maybe there are very specific things that really just didn't work out for you. And it can be a good learning experience that could benefit you the next time you apply. So, and then finally, we do announce our fellows no later than Monday, June 5th, and that's basically the beginning of the fellowship year for our 2017 fellows. And the fellowship year ends up being not just 1 year, it ends up being a 2-year program. You don't get $50,000, unfortunately, but the idea is that in the first years when we bring in the 6 visiting critics to meet with you, and the second year is when you come back, you invite 4 back, and we host the discussion series. And we kind of need this 2-year window because it takes so long to schedule our visiting critics, that they're very busy people and you almost need a year in advance to even get them on your calendar. So that's kind of what the perks are. I'm almost to you, Tia. We're almost there. So again, I'm just going to give you the behind the scenes, like what do the jurors see? We have our own in-house application system, and once you've applied, you're assigned a random number. And if you're the first round, you're a juror, you have your own individual login, and you'll click the first round, and this is what it looks like. You're an index, and you may be number 174, you may be number 1, and it's just all randomized. But this is what the jurors see. This is more important. So what they're going to see when they click on your number, if you're number 113, this is an example of the work of Gregory Euclid, who was both a Jerome Fellow, which is for emerging artists, and then he became a McKnight Fellow several years later. If you've already started the application process, then you know that you're inputting information such as the title and the date and the media and the dimensions. And this is what I wanted to talk about when you were had the question talking about if you had didactics, like if you wanted to invite some kind of caption information, if you wanted to tell the jurors something about the work, because you know now that the jurors are not necessarily looking at your statement. They're looking at your image. So one of the perks about this kind of system is that the minute that this image pops up, they're getting all this caption information, and it's no extra effort for them to really read what's written, what's typed in here. And we've increased the number of characters that's allowed, so now it's 400 characters that you can add. And it's not a necessity to always add this kind of extra information. Don't feel like you're obliged to. But if you want to tell them something, draw attention to something, give them some context for either how the work is made or how it was presented or where it was shown, then this is your opportunity to do that. You know, I wouldn't cut and paste chunks of your artist statement because it's not going to read very well. But I would say, you know, think about it as these jurors that go through these quickly, this is your chance to make them pause, because that's the whole goal. It's like you want them to get interested in you and they want to know more. They want to know more because they want to put you in the second round, so they make sure they look at your resume and your artist statement. And if you make it to the second round, you want them to know more about you, so you come and do a studio visit. So this is this goal, is to kind of, you know, you're baiting them a little bit, saying, I'm really interesting, come and see me in my studio, please. So here, because Gregory's work is interesting because of some of the choices he made. So I want to highlight this real quick. First of all, in his media, you know, he could have just written mixed media, but he didn't. Instead, he identified the very specific things that went into this object that we're looking at. And again, you're looking at this quick. You don't want them to be confused. You don't want it to be mysterious. It's better to be explicit. So he writes that there's acrylic paint, there's paper, there's a paint can, there's pencil, there's pine needles, there's moss, there's sedum, sponge, and a stone. One thing he didn't do here in the dimensions, you should actually enter if it's inches or feet, and maybe it's obvious that this is probably not a 16-foot paint can, but at the same time, just to give you a heads up, you should probably indicate if it's millimeters, centimeters, inches, or feet. And then here, what he's providing with this additional kind of these 400 characters. So character is not words, it's spaces as well as each letter and punctuation. But you can do that in a Word document, and maybe you cut it and paste it so you could count and make sure the words are 400 characters or less. He typed in, the paint was poured onto the land and allowed to set. It was then dug out, and a diorama of a river valley was built on top of it. So in just 2 very basic sentences, he's really explaining a lot about the process, about how he made what he made. And it tells a juror a lot about the kind of the site specificness of the idea of the landscape and a little bit about his process. So again, like not everybody will necessarily do this kind of an explanation, but I'm just throwing this out that in his case, I think it helped give a context to the work. If you, sure.
Okay, so the last time years ago, it will tell us how to download these images, correct? Because this looks very different than when I saw it years ago.
So no, what we're looking at right now on screen is what the jurors see. This is not what you see. Later in this presentation, I'll show you what you do about how you upload. Right now, I'm trying to show you what the jurors see, because this is something you don't see. You're inputting this information, and then this is how we're extracting it and providing a platform for the jurors to review it. Yeah. And if you upload a video, we ask you to put it on YouTube, and what our webmaster does is by just providing the URL, we're able to, there's no extraneous information, so you don't have to set up a false account or anything like that. I mean, you just upload it, and they can black out and just extract your video. And then anything you've inputted in terms of information, the date, the number of minutes. And again, and this is the work of Nate Young. He mentions here, like, note the audio clip from closing number 3 is a sample for the audio installed on the church pew with headphones in image number 1. And so he's referencing in his content, because as I mentioned, you're not allowed to he couldn't just add an extra video and have 11 images. The idea is this video has to reference a still image that he provided in one of the 10 images, and that's what he's writing here. He's saying this is the audio clip from closing number 3. It's a sample for the audio installed in a church pew. And I'm not showing you what he's referencing by that, but it would make sense if you were looking at his entire application. So. And now I'd like to turn it over to Tia, and she can talk a little bit about her practice and a little bit about her selection of as far as which images and kind of the choices you made about what to include and what not to include. So, thank you.
Hi, excuse me, I'm Tia Simone Gardner, and I'm one of the McKnight Fellows for this year, because I'm shorter than you. So this process, because I'm an interdisciplinary artist, some of the things about image choice really did come down to which work I had the best images for, because there's some things that I just couldn't represent very well using photography. So I used my artist statement as a way to talk more broadly about the kinds of things that I've done, both present and past, and to try to sort of link everything together. So these are some of the images that I ended up using. These are some of my own photographs. This is a photograph of mine and an installation. And this was like a studio installation, so it wasn't actually the way that it showed in the gallery, but again, something that I was able to talk about a bit in my statement. And then this is what Carrie was talking about, how the interface looks. So one of the projects I submitted was documentation of a performance. And what I did was I talked about what the actual project was itself. Like it's 400 characters, and that's a lot. For me, that's a lot of space to describe a thing, given that you also have an artist statement that you can use. And you can do this for every image that you upload. So I utilized that. I also had a collaborative project that I thought I wanted to include. And this image wasn't as strong, but I thought the project was strong. And so I wanted to include that, and I used, again, the sort of side panel to add the text, that people could sort of understand what it was and what it was for. And so this was the image that the jury itself saw. And I think Carrie actually did. I submitted my application. I had been working on my application, but I submitted my application a week before the deadline. But I had been working on it, and Carrie, I could email Carrie and say, ask her a question, and she could go into it and look at it and tell me if something was wrong. And I think that she did. I think you did actually email me and say, hey, I think you need to re-upload something, or yeah. So that was super helpful, not to wait to the last minute to do it. Again, this is another example. And so, yeah, I write as a part of my work, and so for me it made sense to try to add some text. I didn't do it on every single one, because sometimes that was redundant when it was a part of a series. I did include a video piece, which I linked to, but then I also took, you can't see that in that tiny little image, but what those are stills from the video piece, because I wasn't sure in jurying how, I'm never sure if people are actually going to spend 5 minutes watching a thing and if it'll make sense, or I think, is it 3 minute limit. That's right. And so I thought, well, I'll put in a description of what it is, but I'll also include small stills as a part of the image set that we get, since you do have the option to include both time-based and still media. This is another, you guys have seen this. There's that. And these, what I was going to say that, yeah, I decided I wanted to include a wide range of things from a number of years. I think this was maybe 6 years of my practice that I included. I didn't want to, part of that was a logistical thing. that some of the work that I had done in between 2013 and 2015, I didn't have a studio here, and so it was much smaller and more draft kind of, like I was making drafts of ideas because I was taking classes at the time, but I didn't want, and then I didn't want to like show those kind of clunky looking documents of what I had, but also I included the collaborative work because I knew the jury would see like an exhibition history gap in my resume or my CV, and I wanted to include the collaborative work to show that like I was still continuing to work in spite of that sort of like gap, that it looked like I wasn't doing anything. We were making projects, but I wasn't doing shows. Yeah, and so this is the interface. This is what you have to upload to YouTube, specifically your video work. And it was fine. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to that. I'll raise my hand, but there's a lot to just sort of mustering up the courage to do it, and that I wanted and needed the money to work, and so what I ended up doing, like I got the McKnight, not expecting to get the McKnight, and I was able to take I teach at a nonprofit organization, and I took the fall off, and I was able to do more studio work, and certainly I've been like offered more opportunities to show work and talk about what I'm doing. I'm working on this mobile studio project. I used some of the funding for that. And actually that's the thing that I'll say, when we did do jurying, when we got to jurying with the studio visits, I decided I wanted to give the jurors something. It's a cultural thing, but it makes sense also for artists, I think, that you leave something with someone when they leave your studio, but also just like having a takeaway. And so I just made small postcards for the jurors that was about a project I was working on. And I think, some of the jurors remembered that and they appreciated that. Not everybody will, but yeah, I thought, just as a thing that I did when we did do studio visits. So yeah. Are there any questions I can answer? No. Okay. I'll be
I
here.
have a question.
Okay.
So is it better to have a professional photographer take pictures of it if it's small images of like intaglios, or is it better to scan it?
That's a good question. I don't, in general, scan things. I scan film if I've had
Like
like
35
4x5.
millimeter?
Well, I had some 4x5s that I was gonna print, but instead of printing and then taking a picture of the print, I used the scans of the film as the representation of the project instead. But I don't know about like scanning for a small drawing or print. I think it's the same.
Did you retell your resume for this specific application?
Yes, I
And
did.
what was it specific, like how was your resume different than the applied to another art specific job?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I included things like grants that I had won or been awarded. And again, that sort of, when there was a exhibition history gap, I can say, well, I was working on this project or ramping up to work on this project, and so I included grants that I had worked on. I included publications, not just a bibliography of reviews, but things that I had also written. Whether those things were for, like I did some writing for an art space collaborative project in Sweden, and it's not something that was published in a U.S. art journal or even published really broadly, but I wanted to include that because it was a creative project that I worked on with other artists. I think those are the main things that I included that I normally wouldn't include for a different kind of art-based job or even some other. I would abbreviate that for something else. Sometimes if you can keep your CV down to a page and you want to do that, but if you have more work, then you can do that and you start editing out shows that are either really far in the past or are no longer as significant. Like I know some artists will include, like when I was younger, I would include things when I had shown. Sure. Oh, I guess I can use the mic. Yeah. When I was a younger artist, I would include when I had done shows at like cafes and things like that because I needed to like have that on my CV, but I don't need those things anymore. So I wouldn't include things like that. And also because of maybe, I don't know how you feel about this, Carrie, but like the level of competitiveness that I think that this is, and just sort of not like knowing who my cohort are. Like, I know what their CVs look like. I knew some of them before applying, and because I knew what the competition would look like, I wanted my CV to look just as sharp, just as ready as I knew theirs did. And looking at other artists' examples, asking your friends, hey, can you look over my CV for me? Something that a friend recently did for me, I had just been going, like redoing CVs, redoing. And I asked her to have a look at it, and she was like, you need to change your format entirely so you can make this more readable. And so having another set of eyes on it as a peer was really helpful in doing that.
Giselle, may I ask how the jurors approached your studio?
Yeah, they were really generous and really took their time. We talked to Carrie ahead of time. Carrie gave us like a brief rundown of what to expect and things not to do. And one thing was not to talk too much because you wanted to give them space to ask questions, but also not to talk too little because it was your time to talk about what you've been doing and the work that you had selected and, those kinds of things. And so 20 minutes goes by very quickly, as you know, but because I didn't have a studio at the time, I got a studio because I got the McKnight, but I was working out of a room in my home, and I didn't want to I just sort of didn't feel good about like having my yappy dog and my things and my shower. Like I just didn't feel good about doing that. So Carrie offered a space at MCAD, and so they came in. They were all like, I did mine early. I didn't want to do mine just from having gone through the MFA and doing crits at the latter part of the day when everyone is tired. I didn't want to do mine too late in the day. And I also kind of didn't want to be the first either because they're just getting their coffee. That's not always within your control, but I think I was second. I was second on the second day. And so they came in, everybody was caffeinated, ready to have a conversation. They were really, really generous. And they do have hard questions sometimes. I don't think the questions I got were terribly hard, but it was like, why this work? And can you talk about how all of your work is connected? Because like I was saying, my practice is very interdisciplinary. And that was a question that I was hedging that they would ask, and so I was ready to answer.
So if we predominantly use the room. I mean, I have 2 studios, so
Mhm.
should I come to MCAD?
No, not necessarily. No. I mean, other artists had their own spaces, and that's probably the more comfortable place to be. Also, the advantage of, I think, having your studio visit in your own studio is all of your work is there instead of just, what you decided to hang that day.
For some phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer? Okay. All right. I'll be right here.
Thank you. Yeah. And anyone who is one of the 16 finalists, very often we just do one on, they call me and we talk about, what the best situation might be for your work. So it's hard to make kind of a blanket discussion about what that studio visit might look like, because again, everybody's situation's a little bit different. So that's something.
And I'm not a student here, even if
Yeah.
I'm continuing in student.
I know, but no, generally, I mean, the idea of the studio visit is that it's a space where you actually, you need to select, it doesn't need to be about where you're physically making the work necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it could be, but a lot of people, they don't. I mean, they may be out shooting photos, and may be developing their work someplace else, but there's, so it's basically a space for you to select the work and arrange the work. Because one of the, just to Tia Simone's comment about, because what you have to do is edit yourself, because 20 minutes is not very long. And so what you have to do, even if we do it in your studio space, where maybe usually you have, 100 prints covering 4 walls. When you bring 3 people into that space, you have to edit it down, because you don't want them just wandering off and asking questions about something you did in 1985. So, yeah, so I mean, that's one thing you have to do regardless. If you do it at MCAD or if you go to somebody else's studio space, you have to be selective in what it is that you do and present. And it doesn't have to be the exact 10 images that you might have used in your application. It should be some of the things, but maybe you have some other newer things you want to share with them. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy of those 10 images. You get to select that. So it's a kind of a whole other kind of very scary, kind of very important, but again, there's like no right answer. Everybody has to kind of choose for him or herself what they do. So, yeah. But it should be fun. That's what I try to let everybody know. It's like, no matter what, just enjoy yourself. You have 3 people who think highly of you and want to visit with you, and you never know. Because I have had artists who don't win one of these fellowships. One of the jurors falls in love with them, and they get to do a show. I've had 2 or 3 artists where that's happened to them. They didn't get the fellowship, but they got an exhibition at a museum out of it. So you just never know what kind of perks you might get. I also have some jurors who often ask for, information about all of the candidates, or they might say, I really like the work of number 51. And so, it's like you have to look at this as an opportunity to let 3 people who don't know you, most of whom have never been to the state of Minnesota before, get to know who our Minnesota artists are. So in a way, there's no reason, again, not to put yourself out there and just share what you are and what you do. So that's my encouragement. But, one of the things, as I mentioned, and, Tia's mentioning too, is, the selection of images is hard, and I just want to kind of go through briefly, some of the, just to kind of show the range of artists who've received these fellowships over the last 5 or 6 years. And these are just samplings of images from their applications. And so these are just an example of Eric Benson. He's a current fellow. Some of his paintings on the left. The work of Julie Buffalo Head. She's this painting and drawing on the right. Leah Edelman-Breer is a photographer, and obviously Tia Simone. Monica Haller, and again, just the wide range. So Monica Haller does a lot of different big projects, and so for her, she's not going to have 10 different projects that she uploads to her application site. Rather, I think she gave us 3 projects, and she represented that project in multiple, you need multiple images in order to give a sense of like what it is. And so like the Silt House, I know she had at least 4 images to help explain what this project is about. So again, it just depends on who you are and what you do as to what those images do for you. Jay Hikus, and here's an example again of an installation shot. We often get questions about, well, should I show something like that or not? And again, it often gives a good sense of scale. and it gives a sense of the way a viewer might interact with your work. And I'll give you a heads up too that our jurors don't intersect with the arts in the same way. It is my job to select the jurors, and I'm looking for people who live in different parts of the country, who live in maybe some bigger cities, some smaller cities. I'm looking for jurors who, one might be an artist, one might be an art historian or critic, someone might be a museum curator or a gallerist, because those kinds of artists actually, or different arts professionals, ask different things about art. You know, the maker is very often interested in how did you do this and why did you choose this technique and not something else. They're interested often in quality of the making quality and ask questions about that. The art historian is very often interested in, who are you interested in? How do you put yourself in this? If you're an abstract painter, how are you connecting your abstract painting to a whole history of abstract art, both Eastern or Western? And so your art historian might give you a question like that. And then the gallery director or somebody who's used to installing artwork might be very often in asking you questions about your audience. It's like, well, how do you install this? How do you want somebody to approach it? And so those three types of jurors are going to ask different things about your work, and they often have very different types of comments about your work. And that's why they don't always see eye to eye, because someone might put a primacy on one thing, and somebody else might put a primacy on, think of it's something else that really should be of the salient value. And so again, that's why it's always this give and take and kind of a back and forth kind of process, but just again showing you what, and these came from their actual applications, just to give you a sense. Her is a photographer. Caroline Kent does painting and drawing and some installation work. Christina Estelle does a lot of site-specific work, mostly sculptural. Gregory Euclid, we've seen a couple of his works. Again, his work, even though it's very sculptural, he very often sometimes he would have an installation shot so you get a sense of scale. It's kind of hard to get one from that particular image. Scott Nedrolo, one of our 2015 fellows, you can learn more about him in April. These are some kind of photographic type pieces that he's done. They kind of replicate the means of photography, even though they're not photographic per se. Kelly O'Brien does a lot of site-specific sculptural work. Selma Fernandez-Richter, photographer. Alexandros Lindsay, and again, I just explain like the image that he has. He created a video that was shown in the back of the vehicle, and it was in Franconia Sculpture Garden. So again, he had a video, like he would have given us this still image to represent his video, and then he could upload the actual video itself to YouTube. So he's kind of referencing what that video would be like, because it's kind of hard to see from this image. Luis Fitch, he does a wide range of work, a lot of print work, a lot of work that he kind of puts out in the world just for people to come across, and this is an example of some of the work he's done along the Mexico border, because he's from Tijuana originally. Tracy Crum works with a lot of woven materials. And so, again, a wide range of work. And I say that the jurors, take that to heart, that they're looking for a wide range of types of artistic practices. Oops, excuse me. Going back a couple more years, Tetsuya Yamada, again, he was showing an installation of a lot of these smaller pieces that composed a larger work. Sam Gould, and this particular work photo on the right, kind of looks like a snapshot of his backyard, which is what it is, because his practice at the time was really invested in his home site, and he created this kind of geodesic space where he hosted different types of activities, and so again, like for him, this kind of a photograph speaks very well to the type of project that he's after. So again, I can't say, whether a photo is good or bad, or if it's, it's going to vary from artist to artist what your best options might be. Alexa Horachowski, here's an installation shot of something she was doing with kelp at the time, and David Bowen does a lot of kind of mechanical, replication with algorithms and technology, and this is an example of his work, and his work is time-based, and so he too uploaded videos that kind of referenced each of his projects. Joe Smith does all kinds of work with mixed media. And Allie Malone's a photographer. Michael Hoyt, here's a photograph him actually working in the public sphere, which is what he did. He did a project where he went out to parks and went to like pick up basketball games and met with people and asked them to sit and pose for him, and he would draw their portraits and have a conversation with them. And Lamar Peterson, he does both painting and collage work and some drawing and sculpture here and there. Amy Toscani, sculptor, mostly found objects. And Catherine Meyer, she does both drawings and also animations. And so a lot of her drawings then become these very large-scale installations. And again, this is a kind of image that gives a sense of her scale, because if you just saw the animation, you may not understand that it's meant to be seen in a very large room. So anyways, those are a couple more examples. Joe Sinis, this is work that he does on paper, colored pencil on paper. And Deani Whitehawk, who's a lot of mostly paintings and some actual beading on her paintings. Jim Denemy, this is he's mostly a painter, but does printmaking as well and some sculpture. And Chris Larson does a wide range of multimedia work. Ruben Noose, mostly a painter. And Natasha Pestich, again, this is an installation shot of a project she did. And again, her installation, she did an installation shot, and then she also included several individual images of posters that she made for this particular show. But again, it gives a sense of the scale, and also even shows how she's installed it, because that can also, because maybe the way you want people to understand your work is very site-specific, and it's kind of, and also it's a way to show off. If you get an opportunity to have shows in places that it's, competitive to have your work shown, like the MAP gallery at Minneapolis Institute of Art, that's when in your little comment section you can say, this was an installation that I did at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And again, it's not bad to say that, because then I might say, oh, wow, I want to look at their resume again and see where else were they showing. And again, it's not necessarily, you don't have to have that, but it's if you have those opportunities, it's not a bad thing to highlight them and show off your accomplishments. And these are images that didn't come from anyone's actual application, but this is like showing, these are just culled from the internet. But obviously you don't want to do an installation shot where it's not doing your work justice. And this is obviously an example of where the banister and the lights kind of are taking precedence over the art on the walls. And again, it's not that we receive images like that. I'm just saying, just don't do it. And then also, we sometimes get work, though, that isn't evenly lit. And I would just kind of stress upon you that an image like this, there's a hot spot in it, here, and a kind of a hot spot there. And then this is not looking so good, and it's kind of not cropped well. And those are things that, again, you talk to people. If you need help kind of photographing work, it's actually worth it, because you don't want the image to make the work less interesting. You want it, the way it's photographed or the way that it's presented needs to show it off as well as possible. So that's kind of just an overview of kind of the wide range of work and the quality of the images that a lot of our fellows have applied for, or have applied with, excuse me. So, the rest of the presentation, it'll be really just going through the step-by-step process of like you hit apply or you hit the submit and this kind of thing. So if you don't need this kind of information about the kind of technical aspects of applying for this, you're welcome to leave now. But if you have questions, you're always welcome to email gallery@mcad.edu or give us a call. Both Melanie and I are happy to answer questions, and we're happy to review your applications as well. Because if you upload 10 images, upload your resume and your artist statement, we have a backdoor view to accessing your materials, and we can read it, we can look over it, and we can talk about it, or you can come in face-to-face and talk about things if you want to set those up too. We can't do those kinds of in-depth meetings less than 2 weeks before the deadline, because then we end up getting really busy. So basically by the 15th of you should, if you want some one-on-one, make sure you contact us by the 15th of March, because the deadline's the 24th, and that's kind of the end period that we can give a lot of in-depth back and forth advice.
Is it fairly intuitive,
Is what intuitive?
the process?
We think it is. I think it is. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty step by step. Yeah, no, we try to make it as simple as possible, that it's really just following, there's 8 steps, and it's like you just, as an entry form, and then you upload your 10 images, a place to upload your resume, a place to upload your artist statement, So it's, and also it won't, the application site won't let you hit submit until all those things are done. Like if you forget to upload something, it tells you that and it won't let you submit,
But
so.
it'll save things as
It does, yes, you're welcome to save, it saves it automatically as you go along.
we'll save it as
Yeah,
we
the-
go, so I won't lose everything.
No, the only thing you need to do is when you are, it automatically saves things. Like and you can do things in any order. Like maybe you want to upload your resume on one day, and 2 days later you want to go back and start uploading images. The one thing about uploading images is, I'm going to go there for a minute, since the question is about saving stuff. When you upload an image, this is what it looks like. You do need to, the only thing you could lose is if you went in and you started you typed in title, your title, medium, date of creation, and all that 400 characters. But if you don't upload a file, then you will lose that information. So, but what you could do is you could upload 10 images, and then come back in 2 days later, and then add all the title, the date, the medium, and all that. Does that make sense?
What does choose file mean?
Choose file means that you click on that, and then you're going to pick where your image is. Like, is your image on your your computer desktop? Probably. That's where most people
Oh, I
might.
see.
Right.
So where it is, and
Right.
then, and then it'll upload it.
It will upload it. Yep.
Got it.
And once it's uploaded, it looks like this when it's been uploaded. But what I'm saying is, what you also can do, you can go in here. You can upload 10 images, and you don't have to give me the title, medium, date, dimensions, but you have to upload an image. Does that make sense? But you can go back and you can delete it, because you can decide, oh, actually, I didn't want to use that photo after all. You can go in and delete it. It gets rid of it. Or if you say, oh my gosh, I put down that was 2016. I forgot. I actually did that in 2011. You hit the edit button right here, and it will reopen it, and you can click on 2011. So once that's the question was about, do I have to do everything at one sitting, or can I come back and forth? You can definitely, it saves all the material, so long as you've uploaded your images. And you can't upload a second image unless you've uploaded one. Does that make sense? You upload one, and then it allows you to upload two, then it allows you to upload the third image. But you can just, end with 3 images and say, I want to finish the next 7 images tomorrow, then come back tomorrow.
And it'll.
It will have saved everything. Yeah. So so long as you hit the upload button, it does it. So for all of these, you have to upload something, and it tells you when it's uploaded. So, and then we ask you to confirm your eligibility. And like, as I say, it tells you if things are, you don't have to upload an additional PDF, and you don't have to upload any links to videos. But it does ask that you have 10 images, it has to have a resume, and you have to have uploaded an artist statement. So,
If you had published, I write probably more than I draw. So if I have published a lot in my chronicle around art theory or even contemporary art, including some of my images, would that be something to include in this or skip it?
so the question was, if you're a writer and you might write articles that have to do with art,
Yes.
that might appear in some kind of publication.
And pieces of my art.
Yeah, it would have to be that the writing directly relates to the images, because this is a visual artist fellowship. It's not for arts writing.
So I'll just skip it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends from artist to artist, but the idea is, yeah, I mean, this is primacy for a
No,
visual
not
artist.
for visual.
It
I'll
is.
skip that part.
Yeah,
Okay, never mind.
great.
That answers that.
All right, are there any other questions? Yes?
So at no point is this project-based resume, you're just doing for each art, the images, the resume, the statement, you don't have to have a future project?
No, you don't have to have a future project. Yeah, that's a good question. We're not asking you to have to describe in a whole other section as I say, the only thing you have to, it's based on, this is an award based on what they're seeing your accomplishments are to date. Are you creating interesting, high quality work? And does it seem that you're working towards something? So I guess that's you're welcome to put work made, 5 or even 10 years previous, but I wouldn't go back probably more than about 10 years. And the important thing is you probably need to show something that's pretty recent, if not 2017, then 2016, because you don't want it too dated, because then you want them to get the sense, although we're not asking you for a project, description per se. Your artist statement should be describing, who you are, what it is, and why you do, and what you do, and then also, what are you going to be working on in the upcoming year. So in your artist statement, you might articulate that, but also just looking at the 10 images, there should be something that looks pretty recent, so they get a sense about, what would a juror find if they come and do a studio visit with you. Does that answer the question? Yeah, great. Well, I can go back to talking a little bit about the step-by-step, because right now this is what our online application looks like. If you go to mcad.edu/McKnight, this is the page that comes up. And it has some information, and you can access previous recipients. If you want to learn more about our past recipients, you can go here. If you want to learn about our studio visit, our studio discussion series, you can click on this. If you want to learn more about our 2016 fellows, you can click on current fellows. But if you want to apply, then what you can do, two ways you can get to our application. You can hit apply right here, or down here you can click on this. It says the 2017 McKnight Visual Artist Fellowship application cycle is now open. So if you click on this blue, right here, it'll take you to this. So this is like where you start your application, the actual application. And here again, it's pretty self-explanatory as far as up here is you make an account, you're going to fill out an entry form, you're going to upload your images, upload videos if you have one, upload a PDF if you have a supplemental PDF that you feel like you need to use to explain your artist practice, your resume, your statement, eligibility, where we ask you to review the eligibility requirements, and then complete. That's where you hit the submit button.
What about the applying button?
Yeah, this is,
I mean, you hit account.
yeah, account is where you make an account. Now these up here, these are things that will help you if you have questions. So if you hit on, if you have questions. So applying talks about the eligibility requirements. It talks help and facts, basically has a couple information about how to format images. Contact us. This has our contact information. And if you forget your password, you can click up there and it will reset your password.
And I could walk up in your office and drive you crazy.
You bet. You can come to my office whenever you like. As long as I'm there. So, but anyways, what we also do, so we do have a PDF that you can download of all the guidelines, and that's, you can click on here, the 2017 McKnight guidelines, and again, that goes over the eligibility, it goes over a lot of the things that I've just gone over, the individual slides that we have. You can also download kind of the same information there. We also, this year, we have provided 3 examples of artist statements, and so you're welcome to download any of these statements. They're from recent 2015 and 16 artists. But what you would do after you kind of land on this page, and maybe you download some examples, you click on Account. You create an account. And even if you've applied for this fellowship before, like a year ago, 10 years ago, doesn't matter when you did, you have to create a new account. Don't try to look up your old password or think that you're in our system, because no, you got to start over again. So you just give us your first name, last name, and email, and a password, and you hit submit. If I can find the submit button, and if you click on that, it says you have created an account and you are logged in. And then it says go to the online application to begin. So you can click there, or you can click the next step is entry form. And here you fill out this information. We ask, your date of birth. The only reason for that is for the jurors are not seeing this entry information. This is all information that we just use from an administrative point of view, where we do create a description of who our applicants are in terms of male, female, or gender if you don't subscribe to either. We have other options. Your date of birth, just so we get a range of kind of who's applying for our mid-career. We do ask for your ethnicity too, and again, this is something that the McKnight Foundation asks us to report back on. But again, the jurors aren't going to be seeing any of this information. This is just for administrative purposes only. And then once you fill that out, you can go to images, and as I mentioned a little bit already, so you're going to do is you're going to add the title, the medium, date, dimensions, and then you're going to upload an image. And when it's been updated, it says here in red, your data has been updated. And as I mentioned, you can edit, delete it, and you can, here it says, because these are thumbnails, these are very small images, and so what you're going to want to do is once you've uploaded an image and you see its thumbnail, you can click on it and you can see a larger image. It blows it up on screen, so you can make sure that maybe it's the right image or maybe it's not blurry, but you can do that as well.
So you'd want inches written, not the marks?
It doesn't matter. You can write out images or it doesn't matter how you designate.
And this one first and then this one?
Again, it doesn't, usually we do height and then width, but
That's what I meant.
but it's not, we're not telling you it's okay if you don't do it that way.
Well, some are real,
Specific, but yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's giving basically the jurors a sense of the scale, but you're not going to, it's not going to hurt you if you do dimensions.
looks good.
So, and then after you do your 10 images, as I say, if there's an error uploading, like here it was an example, you're going to get a message and tell you what you did wrong. It says the image size must have a height or width of exactly 1920 pixels. If you're having trouble resizing your images, please refer to our help or FAQ page. So this lets you know that something's wrong. And if it's too big, like if you upload a file that's 10 megabytes and it doesn't accept it, then you'll get an error message telling you it's too big.
Okay.
So it's going to tell you if it, and if you run into problems and you're not sure what's going on, then just give us a call or phone or email us or call us. No, you call me because no, Melanie.
Don't bother them.
Yeah, just please call me. It's my job in order to troubleshoot any technical problems that you might be having. So, yep.
Not more to
And the next, if you have the videos, again, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you're providing a URL down here where you can link to your YouTube video. And again, you're going to provide us with a title, medium, data creation, duration, and then this optional information. Here's the additional PDF, if you'd like. Again, you're just going to choose the file. You're going to find it on your computer and upload it and hit upload. Same with the resume, and we do ask that you not put your name and contact information on it because we strive to make this as anonymous as possible so that the jurors are judging you based on the quality of the images that they're seeing as well as your statement and resume, but not making assumptions based on your name or where you live or any of these other things. We also don't want to divert their attention elsewhere, like by giving them links to your website or things like that. Artist statement, and I say, please include some indication as to the future artistic direction so the jurors will have some idea how the fellowship would affect you and your work. So that's a little bit more explicit. But it's basically saying, what are you working on and how would this fellowship, enhance what it is you're doing. The confirmed eligibility is, again, mentioning that you have to be 18 years old or older. You have to be a Minnesota resident. You need to have lived in the state for at least a year before you apply. Yes, we kind of already went over these. And the reason why, we mentioned, things that you cannot, if you're, you have to wait out 5 years before applying again. So if you won a fellowship in 2013, you can't apply yet. You have to wait another year. But if you did apply in 2012, if you won a fellowship in 2012, then you can apply this year because that's 5 years out. As I say, and that's a complete submission. And it can also let you know, the system will, that we received your submission. And if you have any questions, again, you're always welcome to call us or email us, and we can check to make sure everything looks good and if there wasn't any problem. So we're here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So are there other questions about the McKnight Fellowships? If not, I'd say good luck, and I hope to see you in future rounds.
I think you're here longer than that, though. I'm pretty sure.
Well, thank you.